Have you ever imagined how Vietnamese weddings changed over 1,000 years? In the year 938, after Ngo Nguyen defeated the Southern Han Army on the Bac Dang River, Vietnam entered a new era of independence after more than 1,000 years under Chinese rule. As Vietnamese feudal society developed, family hierarchy, ancestor worship, and Confucian traditions became deeply connected to marriage customs. Over the centuries, Vietnamese weddings continued evolving through dynasties, colonial influence, wartime hardship, and modernization. So in this video, we'll explore how traditional Vietnamese weddings changed across different eras, from feudal rituals to modern celebrations, and how ceremonial stages like Lê Yam Ga, first meeting ceremony, Lê An Hoi, engagement ceremony, Lê Vu Quy, wedding ceremony, and Lê Lai Mat, return visit ceremony, continue to remain part of Vietnamese culture. The origins of Vietnamese wedding traditions go back much further than the feudal dynasties themselves. In ancient Vietnamese culture, local communities already had their own marriage customs long before weddings became heavily influenced by Confucianism. According to Linh Nam Chich K, one of Vietnam's famous medieval folk collections, early Vietnamese people once used simple objects like packets of earth as symbolic engagement gifts. Later, betel and areca, meaning trao cow in Vietnamese, gradually became the most important wedding offering, symbolizing connection, loyalty, and marriage. Even today, betel and areca still appears in many traditional Vietnamese weddings, especially during engagement ceremonies. In the past, Vietnamese weddings were commonly called hôn lễ. The word hôn originally referred to the evening, because ancient wedding ceremonies often took place in the late afternoon or evening rather than during the daytime. And lễ basically means ceremony or festival. As Vietnamese feudal society developed, especially under the influence of Confucianism, wedding customs gradually became more formalized and structured. This eventually developed into the system known as Luc Lê, or the six wedding rites. By the time of Lê Thanh Tông during the later La Dynasty, many of these rituals were formally regulated within feudal law and social customs. The six rites traditionally included Nap Thai, when the groom's family first brought symbolic gifts like betel and areca to express interest in the marriage. Van Yan, asking for the bride's name and birth information for horoscope matching. Nap Cat, announcing favorable compatibility and confirming the engagement agreement. Nap Trung, also known as Nap Tay, the formal engagement ceremony, where larger offerings were brought to the bride's family. Thin Ki, selecting and requesting an auspicious wedding date. And finally, Thun Nguyen, the official wedding procession where the bride was escorted to the groom's family. Over time, these six rites gradually became simplified as Vietnamese society modernized. Today, most Vietnamese weddings no longer follow the full Luc Lê system in its original form. Instead, many customs evolved into the four major ceremonial stages commonly recognized today. Lê Yam Ga, the first meeting ceremony. Lê An Hoi, the engagement ceremony. Lê Vu Quy or Lê Khoi, the wedding ceremony. And Lê Lai Mat, the return visit ceremony after the wedding. So modern Vietnamese weddings are actually the result of centuries of cultural blending, combining ancient local traditions like Trao Co with Confucian ceremonial systems that developed during the feudal era. And from here, we'll continue exploring how each of these wedding stages changed, adapted, and survived across different periods of Vietnamese history. Begin with one of the earliest stages of a traditional Vietnamese wedding is Lê Yam Ga, the first formal meeting between the two families. In the feudal era, this ceremony carried major importance because marriages were often arranged by parents rather than the couple themselves. The groom's family would visit the bride's house with simple offerings such as tea, betel leaves, fruits, or wine to formally open discussions about the marriage. At this stage, families discussed not only the relationship itself, but also background, compatibility, reputation, and possible wedding arrangements. During later dynasties, and even into the colonial period, Lê Yam Ga remained highly formal in many families, especially in northern Vietnam. Today, the ceremony still exists, although it is usually much simpler. Modern couples often already know each other well before the ceremony, so Ga has become more symbolic, focusing on family introductions rather than arranged marriage negotiations. After Ga comes Hoi, the engagement ceremony, which remains one of the most recognizable Vietnamese wedding traditions today. Historically, Hoi officially confirmed the marriage agreement between the two families. During the feudal and Nguyen dynasty periods, this ceremony was highly ceremonial and carefully organized. The groom's family prepared red gift trays containing symbolic items such as tea, alcohol, sticky rice cakes, fruits, betel leaves, and sometimes jewelry. The number of trays often carried symbolic meaning, while the procession itself reflected the family's preparation and respect. Among noble or wealthy families, Hoi could become extremely elaborate, involving servants, musicians, traditional clothing, and formal rituals. During the colonial and early modern periods, the ceremony became slightly less rigid, but many symbolic elements remained unchanged. Today, Hoi is still widely practiced across Vietnam. The red trays, ao dai, tea ceremonies, and family gatherings continue to play an important role, although modern weddings are generally shorter and more flexible than in the past. The main wedding ceremony is often associated with lễ vu quy on the bride's side. In feudal Vietnamese society, this moment represented the bride officially leaving her family to join the groom's household. At the time, marriage was deeply connected to family structure, and women traditionally became members of the husband's family after the wedding. The ceremony itself focused heavily on ancestor worship and family rituals. The bride and groom offered incense at the ancestral altar to report the marriage to previous generations and ask for blessings. Tea ceremonies were also extremely important, symbolizing gratitude and respect toward parents and elders. During the Nguyen dynasty, weddings among noble families could last for several days, with highly formal processions, music, ceremonial clothing, and strict etiquette. During wartime and economically difficult periods in the 20th century, many weddings became much simpler, often keeping only the essential rituals and family gatherings. Today, lễ vu quy still remains an important cultural part of many Vietnamese weddings. Even when couples organize modern hotel receptions or destination weddings, traditional home ceremonies often still happen before the celebration begins. One lesser-known tradition in Vietnamese weddings is lễ lai mat, which usually takes place a few days after the wedding ceremony. Historically, this was when the newly married couple returned to visit the bride's family after she had officially joined the groom's household. In feudal society, this ceremony carried emotional importance because it symbolized the continuing relationship between the bride and her original family. The couple often brought gifts and shared a meal together as a sign of gratitude and respect. In modern Vietnam, lễ lai mat is usually much simpler than before, and some couples no longer organize it formally. However, the idea behind the tradition, maintaining family connection after marriage, still remains important in many Vietnamese families today. As Vietnam changed through colonial influence, wartime, economic reforms, and globalization, weddings evolved along with society. During the French colonial period, Western elements such as white wedding dresses, suits, photography, wedding rings, and banquet-style receptions gradually entered Vietnamese wedding culture, especially in cities. During wartime and difficult economic periods, weddings often became smaller and simpler because families focused more on practicality than large celebrations. After modernization and economic growth, weddings became larger again, with luxury venues, professional filming, destination weddings, and social media transforming how celebrations are organized. But despite all these changes, many traditional stages still remain surprisingly important. Lễ Giam Ga, lễ Hoi, lễ vu quy, lễ lai mat, ancestor ceremonies, tea rituals, and family gatherings continue connecting modern Vietnamese weddings to traditions that began centuries ago. Vietnamese weddings have changed through dynasties, colonial influence, war, and modern life. But after more than 1,000 years, many traditions still remain, from trao co and tea ceremonies to the connection between families and ancestors. And maybe that's what makes Vietnamese weddings special. Even as the celebrations continue to modernize, they still carry pieces of the past into the present.